This morning is a sort of a dual holy day mode. Yom HaBikkurim and continued observance of Chag, where we avoid the partaking of risen bread. And keeping with the theme of the temple, the cornerstone of our faith, as we passionately declared this morning, is the resurrection of Yeshua HaMashiach from the dead. You take away this amazing event, and our faith is reduced to a lifeless religious system of appropriate moral and ethical conduct. And you may be interested to know that resurrection actually doesn't mean rising up. It doesn't mean that. Think about it. If Yeshua had risen up, he probably would have bumped his head in the cave. No, resurrection literally means exiting. It means exiting, going out, leaving death and its shrouds behind. If the Messiah has not been raised, declared Rabbi Shaul, your trust is useless.
That's right.
Central to the good news for all humanity is Yeshua's atoning work on the tree and his resurrection from certain death. And it's through his resurrection that we are provided the solution to the mystery of death. Rabbi Shaul is right. Throughout the Brit Chadashah, everywhere the word declares, Yeshua is our first fruits. He's our Bikkurim from the dead. And for those of us who believe, we will also experience the same victory over death. The execution tree and the Messiah's resurrection from the tree, or from the resurrection from the tree, and so of course his exit from the tomb, represent the heart of what it is to be people of his way. And that's what the second half of this morning's Yom Tehiyah, Resurrection Day celebration is all about, Yeshua. It's all about Yeshua. We have a lot of brothers and sisters in Yeshua that maybe are a little distorted here and there theologically, but they better get it right in Yeshua. You better have it right with Yeshua, the firstborn from the dead, who is alive. And because he lives, so shall we live as well.
That's right.
Adonai said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel, after you enter the land I'm giving you and harvest its ripe crops, you are to bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the Kohen. He is to wave the sheaf before Adonai so that you will be accepted. The Kohen is to wave it on the day after the Shabbat. And on the day that you wave the sheaf, you are to offer a male lamb without defect in its first year as a burnt offering for Adonai. And its grain offering is to be 1 gallon of fine flour mixed with olive oil, an offering made by fire to Adonai as a fragrant aroma. Its drink offering is to be of wine, 1 quart. You are not to eat bread, dried grain, or fresh grain until the day you bring the offering for your God. This is a permanent regulation through all your generations, no matter where you live. Traditionally, the celebration of Yom HaBikkurim in Israel, young men, and I know it's hard for us to picture these days, but young men would ritually wash their sits, the tools they use to cut the barley, and begin the harvest, while the young women, dressed in white robes and their Easter white shoes, just kidding, but in their bright robes, I did that for Mr. Carpenter because I know he appreciates that. Thank you. And the women would follow the men, gathering the harvest sheaves and waving them and offering and dancing through the fields. They were just thrilled and elated with God's faithful provision. For the most part, this holy day of Yom HaBikkurim is overlooked by Jews and Christians, but that wasn't always so in the days of the temple. Then it was quite an elaborate ceremony with the priest, like I said, leading praise and, with music and psalms and dance like we have done throughout the morning here. Yom HaBikkurim has another name. Many times it's referred to as Sefirat HaOmer, celebrated as the first harvest of spring, of course, is the barley. We've studied the barley before. For those of you who know, barley is probably the most perfect food out there. Just ask Kristen. She's into organic eating, natural eating. She'll tell you, if you study barley, it's probably the most perfect food. So those of you who drink beer, you're just doing it because it's healthy. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just trying to be healthy and biblical. We've just gotten too sensitive in these days. We got to learn to lighten up a little bit. Amen? Amen. Thank you. The grain brought before the priest as offering, he would take the sheaves or the omer, and he would lift it high in the air, and he'd wave it in all directions. He'd wave it in all directions. Hello. Yeah. All directions, up and down. And acknowledging God on high, and God's faithfulness, and expressing his thanksgiving for what was provided. Amen. It's no coincidence that these rituals of the harvest coincide with the death, burial, and resurrection of Messiah Yeshua. And while he was bound and executed, not unlike this being bound, and that's how they would cut him. They would bind him. The barley in the fields, as I said, would be bound, and then they would be cut. We'll be doing that in our yard soon. Not that we have barley in our yard, but the yearly ritual in our home is, of course, to bind up a lot of the old plants and cut them. Right? So they have a fresh growing season. The journey barley would take to be presented to the priest at the temple is not unlike the journey Yeshua himself, set free from the bonds of earth, took himself to his Father's house. The barley was the first harvest of many more to come. And after 49 days of lifting up the sheaves of barley to God, the 50th day represented another harvest. And that harvest would take place on Shavuot, the wheat harvest. And likewise, following his resurrection on the 50th day, Yeshua would send his comforter, the Ruach, to be with us until his return. Amen? And for us as people of Yeshua's way, this holy day, though overlooked, holds significance, the most significance of all, as a day that our Messiah has the victory over death. And Rabbi Shul once again articulated that very, very succinctly in a letter, once again, closing his letter, close to the closing of his letter to Corinth, when he said, "But the fact is, the Messiah has been raised." That's right. It's undisputed. Messiah has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have died. For since death came through a man, also the resurrection of the dead has come through a man. For just as in connection with Adam, all die, so in connection with the Messiah, all will be made alive. But each in their own order. The Messiah is the first fruits. Then those who belong to the Messiah at the time of their coming. Time they're coming. All die, but in Messiah we live. We can be wrong about a lot of things, but be right in Messiah Yeshua. Amen.